Okay, so what is fibre and how much do we need?
So fiber's the indigestible part of the plant, and with only a third of adults getting their five a day anyway, we're just not eating enough plants, which also explains why we have such a dire intake in the UK particularly. But what's so key about fiber is that it's not just food for us. The reason I say it's indigestible is that it kind of goes through our digestive system, gets to the very bottom, and it feeds what we call our gut bacteria, the gut microbiome. And there's so many amazing functions that happen from fiber there. And these gut bugs digest the fiber, they consume it and give off byproducts, a lot of the time short chain fatty acids. And it's this miracle type scientific discovery that these components signal and interact with our brain. It keeps our gut junctions tight and protects our gut lining. It's involved with all sorts of amazing, amazing benefits for our heart health, our brain health, we're discovering, as much as our mood. So fiber is the part of the food that really feeds our body and helps it send signals and do different jobs and looks after our digestion. But I think 80% of people just think fiber, according to a stat recently, is just about bowel movements. And it's so much more than that. And that's what makes it hard to discuss, because it's not a sexy sell often discussing fiber. And yeah, it's from all those plants, and we need to be getting around 30 grams a day. And part of my magic fiber formula is 30 grams a day, 30 different types of plants a week, 30 chews per meal, and then 30 meals in minutes.
Oh, we have to digest all of that. That's because it's very clever. Very good. Okay, so we're saying 30 grams a day. Yeah?
Yes. That's recommended.
Give me that in visuals.
Okay. It's easier than you think. It's just a standard healthy day, but how many of us have time? That's the thing. So breakfast could be porridge with a banana and some nuts. That would be around 10 grams. I mean, that's all it takes, because you're having oats. They're a wonderful source of fiber. If you add chia seeds, what a powerhouse. You can boost that to probably 11, 12 grams, and you're already a third of your way up to your 30 gram total. Lunchtime is where I think everybody's falling short, because in this country, we don't have a food culture, where we sit and consume meals and we take a break from our work or our office. We rarely take long enough to sit and have a proper meal like they do in Europe. And convenience items and ultra processed foods are not full of fiber. They've had it all stripped out a lot of the time to be hyper palatable, as you want more and more, cheaper cost, all that sort of thing. But lunch, if in an ideal world, a quick stir fry can get you up to 10, 15 grams with lots of different vegetables, with some rice, some whole grain pasta, or some noodles. You can add some beans and pulses. Remember, beans contain, like, one can's 23 grams of protein, roughly. It's the same as a chicken breast, but it also contains 20 grams of fiber. So you can have
20 grams in a tin of beans? Is there really?
In a tin of beans, yeah. So it's
Wow.
huge. I know. And if you think about that, it's such an easy way. Adding beans and pulses to your meals is such an easy way of bulking up the fiber. And if you're having a traditional bolognese or a meal in the evening, just add in some lentils, just add in some pulses, some peas from the freezer. And all of that in total makes it really easy to get your 30 grams a day traditional meals, or bulking up your classics. Like, I've got 60 amazing recipes that it's about adding in. I want you to add a little twist to your favorite family favorites.
And 30-second chews, it's something that we don't do. We rush our food when we eat it. That idea of 30 seconds to chew your food is, for a lot of people, kind of quite scary, I would think, actually.
Yeah. Try it, give it a go, and you'll realize how hard it is.
Like, if we pause for 30 seconds on our chat here and just, I've done it. It's a long draw.
It is a long draw. I think that's the point. It's to try and instill mindful behavior. And, digestion starts in the mouth, of course. It starts when we visualize and look at the food. And the problem is, so many of us are sat on our laptops, or we're on our mobile phones, or we've got the TV screen on. And then we're not actively creating the digestive juices in our mouths, the enzymes that are needed to break the food down properly. And if we're not chewing, we're also affecting our peptide hormones and things that are released that tell us when we're hungry and when we're full. So 30 chews is a bit of a challenge, I think, for mindful eating. And you'll notice 30 chews on an ultra processed food is like impossible compared to 30 chews on a home cooked meal. And that's purely because of the degree of processing that happens.
Because a home cooked meal, we have to break the food down, and it's slower to break down than a really high processed food.
Yeah, I mean, let's take a meal example. There was a study conducted, I think it was at UCL or King's last year, quote me which one, but they compared two groups of people eating identical meals, so traditional, like a lasagna or a shepherd's pie, the bolognese, And one group was homemade and one was ready meals. And they found the homemade category lost twice as much weight than the category of those that were eating the identical meal. I mean, calorie for calorie calculated, but ultra processed. And it's purely because of those extra chemicals, the degree of processing, stripping down the fibers, the food matrix of our foods. It's like comparing an almond to ground almonds. Chewing the almond itself, you only absorb 70% of the calories, whereas you'd absorb 100% of them if you ate them ground into a little delicious powder that you're adding into your baking.
And of course, there's a calorie output from having to chew your food more, and from your body have to break it down itself. There's a kind of a thermogenic effect to that too.
Yeah, I'd say a small thermogenic
Yeah,
effect.
yeah.
Yeah, but definitely it's still there. And I do think that there's some really interesting research now that's it's actually quite scary. And I've got kids and I feel for this area, but because children are chewing less and less, their jaw structure is changing. And scientists are starting to observe the fact that it's affecting speech and language as well, because we're not chewing food anymore. And this goes into a whole other realm, and it's very emerging research, but fiber is just so crucial, not only for our development, but structurally in speech. I mean, who'd have thought?
Amazing. And chat to me about, because one issue people tend to have with regards to fibre is, oh, I'll be bloated, or I'll feel, it'll bloat me out.
I mean, initially, if you overdo it, of course, this is the thing. The human body has to work, and like I said, those gut bugs will give off gas as a byproduct when they're working and they're fermenting within your gut. So the key here is to introduce fiber slowly. I'd love it if anyone listens to this conversation and thinks, oh, I'm going to go away and I'm going to suddenly fiber max out my diet completely. It's best you start one meal at a time. And you actually need to drink a lot more water than you realize, because fiber needs a lot of water, carbohydrates, especially to break down four times as much per one molecule of carb to water. So do it slowly, and your body will adapt. It actually only takes 24 to 48 hours for your microbes to start changing for the better.
The idea of 30 new foods, it's a great goal to aim for. A lot of people may think that it's, again, a little scary. What we're really saying is that trying to get even a couple of new foods into your diet is it's the variation that your gut really it thrives upon.
Oh, 100%. I can't emphasize this one enough. And at first, when I heard, oh, the American Gut Project says, 30 plants, I was like, God, it's another number. No one wants to have another overwhelming number. We're fed up. Calorie counting doesn't work, all of that sort of arbitrary stuff. But actually, 30 plants is so much easier than you think. Olive oil counts as a quarter. Dark chocolate counts as a point. Herbs and spices are all a quarter of a point. And it can be having a green tomato or a yellow tomato or a red tomato. They all count as different points. So it's more of an encouraging way of saying, look, your body needs polyphenols, different colors, antioxidants from the food it consumes, because that's what the gut bacteria need to thrive. If you want a really good base, don't eat the same meal every single day, or just add a different topping to your porridge each morning instead of having the same one. And that in itself, it's much easier than you think. If you follow my book anyway, you'll probably get like near 30 plants a day, let alone, over the course of the week. But I promise it's so much more manageable than the number itself implies.
And we're seeing a lot of research around gut health now, the gut-brain axis, the microbiomes. Fibre will help your gut to thrive.
Yeah, 100%. So this gut-brain axis is really fascinating because it's the chemical pathways that link the vagus nerve. Imagine like a long invisible line from your stomach up to your head. And we feel it when we're nervous. You get butterflies in your tummy. There's constant interactions. What a lot of people don't realize is that serotonin, like 90% of it, is produced in our gut. And it's actually the chemical pathways that flow up the gut-brain axis that give us that happy hormone, that good feeling intact. So it's so linked to mental health. And I think that's so understated when we discuss gut health, is that good gut health equals good mental health. In other areas of research I was looking at, also for women during menopause and for different hormonal fluctuations, it is crucial because estrogen receptors reside within our gut as well, and it declines, and the diversity of gut microbes decline as we age. And that's true for men and women, but particularly for women because of how much estrogen was initially there and the receptors. So the more variety you get, you're helping that gut-brain axis and you're helping your menopausal symptoms. And there's also links then with heart health. And this gut-brain axis is a constant communication we have no control over, apart from to eat well and hope that the right microbes are going to help do the right thing within our gut.
And of course, your gut health and fibre both have an impact on immunity and longevity, don't they?
Yeah, so that is also crucial. So think of our bacteria within our gut training our immune system. 70 to 90% of it all resides in that area. It's like separated by one single tiny, tiny minuscule cell. And they work together to strengthen the immune system, but also those incredible byproducts of digesting fiber for our gut bugs, those short chain fatty acids, keep the gut junctions tight, keep the barrier lining in our gut really tight. And that stops toxins and items that we don't want leaking into our bloodstream. You want a really good gut lining. And that comes from looking after the gut bugs. And sadly, what I see, because only 4% of us are consuming enough fiber, we see a lot of chronic inflammation in this country, and it could also be leading to other conditions and areas, which I'm sure we'll get onto. But essentially, if you're protecting that lining, you're reducing inflammation. And as we age, if we're not eating a good diet, we're just enabling a leaky gut, and we're enabling our body to have a bigger immune response than we want it to, essentially. And I think it's really prominent because, 50 to 60% of bowel cancer could be prevented through diet, and there's so much to think about.
And talk to me about the fibre powerhouses that you chat about in the book. People love those ideas of a superfood or a powerhouse or whatever, but there are some that are, that are really simple swaps or really simple additions.
Yeah, I think so. So, first of all, think of the Super Six as like a lovely item of food that I discuss in the book. It's just what people might call peasant food, traditional foods, that the ones that, ironically, in a cost of living crisis, are the ones that are more affordable. It's the beans, the pulses, the legumes. If you buy them in bulk, nuts and seeds and whole grains, fruits, veggies, all these things are the things that are actually predominantly, depending on how you buy them, frozen or fresh, could potentially help your wallet. I know in terms of protein swaps, the best one you can possibly do is the beans and pulses for animal produce for your wallet anyway, if you're looking at that sort of thing. But for most people, it's not going for a bag of crisps, it's having some popcorn. I mean, that doubles the fiber intake. It's understanding how to read your labels to make better snack choices. It's knowing that if you snack on a raw banana, not raw banana, but a greener one, and then save the more cooked ones for your baking, that you're getting more resistant starch, which is this amazing type of fiber, which is so researched for our gut health. So it's making smart choices. And I've got a whole array of swaps in the book, even dark chocolate, loads of fiber.
Talk to me about supplements then, because people will be listening in. There you will be seeing them in their health food stores, in the shopping centres now. Supplements do follow trends, and fibre is now a trend. So
I
chat to me
know.
about that.
I did a whole section, as you'll have seen in the book, on supplements, and that's purely because they do have a place. I'm all for thinking they fill a gap. Sometimes it can be helpful if it's going to stop you using a laxative, or it's a first measured response to perhaps being in hospital for a while, having an injury, trying to improve your gut health. That's great, but don't think of it as a long term solution. Not all supplements are equal, of course. I think at the moment you're going to see a lot of psyllium husk, which is one of those ingredients you add to water and it creates like a viscous gel-like fiber. And that's what happens in our stomach. It slows gastric emptying. It reduces our blood sugar response. So you're not getting spikes after a meal, that sort of thing. And that is an effective measure. But I would argue that NHS now in the UK recommends that 2 kiwis a day is more effective for constipation relief as well for most people than taking these additional supplements. So take them with a pinch of salt. They have a place, but they don't offer any diversity for your gut. So having a supplement every day to relieve your bowel habits or to improve constipation or whatever it is you're using it for, it's not going to be helping your long-term health outcomes or any of the stuff we're discussing today, like your heart, your brain health. It's just going to be keeping things moving.
Kiwis are back in fashion too, aren't they? I'm seeing them everywhere. And you brought it up organically there, but like I'm seeing it on all my. I don't know what that says about my social media feed, but I'm seeing them all over my social media.
He's a Kiwi fan. But it's great. It's because we have some clinical trials that they're very, very effective and they contain tons of different types of wonderful fiber, very condensed. And for such a small fruit, also 2 kiwis is a wonderful source of vitamin C, which we know as well. So I'm all for people consuming kiwis. In fact, you might be seeing these trends of eating the skin as well. There's no harm doing that either.
The thought of it. I blend it I blend them up into a juice or something, or I'll take a spoon to the fleshy bit, but I'll blend the skin though. I will blend the skin. I'll say that.
Oh, well done. See, I can't do the furry skin, but there's those golden kiwis. I'm such a fan of these golden kiwis that have like a softer type of skin. And my 5-year-old eats the whole thing with the skin. I mean, I've encouraged it. He doesn't know any different. And I'm sure at school when someone sees it, they're like, what are you doing?
We're doing an episode later on phobias. I'm going to bring up my kiwi skin phobia. But anyway, what are the common misconceptions people have around fibre that you see in clinic when people are chatting to you?
100%. Like I said, the stat at the beginning, 80% of people just think it's linked to bowel movements. That is the major, I think, fact that people think, oh, well, I'll just eat a prune. I think there's a lot of misconceptions that there's these age-old foods that people turn to improve their diet. I'll just add a few prunes to my diet. And that's what used to be the kind of saying, or I will add a little bit of porridge, that sort of thing. I think the biggest misconception is that fibre is linked to so many different conditions within our body, and nothing is going to be absorbed effectively if your gut isn't working effectively. And we've been saying that in the nutrition and dietetic world for donkey's years. And before gut health became a popular topic, before we even had as much research as we have now that I'm able to discuss today, because we know that vitamins and minerals are absorbed in the small intestine. And we know cholesterol can be lowered by the amount of fibre we have, and heart disease is the biggest contributor to death, sadly, for women in this country. And for men, it's one of the high factors. Diabetes risks have never been higher. And it's the fundamental element of the diet that keeps you satiated. And a lot of people come to me in clinic saying, I'm always hungry. Why? And all it takes is some very simple snack swaps, some very simple meal additions, and their whole life, their skin, everything is completely transformed purely for the addition of the fibrous foods.
If there were 3 simple tips you wanted people to take away from today's chat, what would they be?
The first tip would be start small. Pick a meal a day you want to start working on. So the first one would be, are you going to start with your lunches, your breakfast, or your dinners? And I think that's the best way to go there. Number 2 is then think about the diversity. So number 2 would be on that one meal you've picked for your first week's challenge. And in the book, I've actually got a plant tracker. So you're able to copy that at home or make notes on your phone and keep a tab on it. Are you able to increase the plants on that one meal and mix it up each week? Because once you've done that for 1 week, you can then start with meal number 2 the next week, and you can build on it. The third one would really be, I think for me, the importance of trying to cook from scratch more. And it's hard. It's really hard. You have to change your whole way of living if you are someone that relies heavily on convenience items and ultra processed foods. I understand how hard that can be. But all it takes is an hour or 2 at the weekend. And there is actually no other answer than trying to cook a bit more here. And that's a skill that I feel we all need a bit more support and help with. So just one meal at the weekend can do 2 or 3 meals during the week if you bulk make and you pop it in the fridge or freezer.
Yeah, it's something like we do that on a weekend, and the kids get involved. We make 2 or 3 different meals. Each one will have 6 odd portions. We store, and it's it is a habit. And I like to cook, which helps. And I had my mum at a cafe when I was younger. So, I've been around food for a long time.
Yeah.
But it is a habit that you just need to get into. And once you're into the habit of it, it's great crack. And like that, you buy a book, you have a new recipe each week. There's an educational component to it, which is great.
Yeah, you're right. It's habitual. And I think the hardest thing is behavior change. But I think also education is power here. And if you are motivated enough to think, hang on, this is linked to how I age. This is linked to my heart, my skin, how I feel, my mood. And it's all because I'm just not cooking myself 1 meal or 2 meals a week. And like I said, your microbes adapt so quickly. And after a week of eating whole foods instead of processed foods, you could potentially change over 50 to 100% of your gut bacteria garden. So it's so worthwhile giving it a go.
Your gut bacteria garden. You've got
cheesy or what?
Cheesy but effective, right? I mean, people can visualize it. It makes lots of sense. And yeah, it's very good. Listen, your book, The Fibre Formula, is out online and in bookstores nationwide, and people can pick it up from today. I'm sure the very best of luck with it, and we'll catch up on the podcast very, very soon. Rhiannon, thank you so much. Folks, I really hope you enjoyed today's episode of Real Health with me, Karl Henry. As ever, you know where we are, at Karl Henry PT on Instagram, Real Health at independent.ie, and on the Irish Independent website. And if you'd like to be heard, don't forget to rate and review. We'll see you next week. So long the phone.